What is going on, YouTube fitness family? I've got a very fun video with you. I've got one of the smartest people I know in the fitness space, Dr. Mike Israetel. So we are going to do a true or false. I put up a poll, plus I put some of my own questions in there. I was interested to hear what he had to say. And we are going to say true or false to that statement, and then maybe a little bit about why we said true or false. But I'm very interested in kind of like what you'll say about a few of these. But without further ado, let's get into our first question. You need heavy deadlifts and barbell rows for a thick back.
I'm like cheating off you. Like.
All right, we're both false?
False.
All right, you want to lead us off? What do you think?
From a physiological perspective, from just how science works, we already know that stimulus to the muscle is what matters. How you get it matters way less. So must-do exercises are kind of a non-starter, like the horse that starts out of the gate and falls down. It doesn't really matter what you put after it. Like, do you need XYZ exercise for it? It's already a false start. First piece of evidence. Second piece of evidence, whatever the fuck you think is mandatory for muscle, for whatever body part to get your full development, some bodybuilder, some dozens of amazing bodybuilders in history never did that, talked shit about it, and had an amazing body part. Explain that. So, you know, Dorian Yates didn't really deadlift. He did rows, but he didn't deadlift. Explain that for the deadlift addicts. There are too many examples to list, but must-do exercises are just categorically not a thing.
I think I agree with that 100%. And another point I'll add to that is when we think about, when you say thick back, we're talking about aesthetics, right? So a lot of times what's actually going to build a more thick, dense back is going to be things that build your lats, your spinal erectors, even up through like your rhomboids. And those exercises are actually not usually more like hip hinge movements. Those are going to be a lot more, let's say, a horizontal plane pull or a very controlled like pull down, where you can really focus that emphasis into your back. Also things that I love with like good bracing, you'll see me do a lot of like cable work where I have like 3 points of contact, and I'm actually using very little my lower back, and I'm using a very good amount of that target muscle group. And what I always tell people is the limiting factor if you're training a muscle group to failure should be that muscle group. If you are getting fatigued because your lower back's giving out, because you are so aerobically taxed, your CNS is so fucked that you can't really do other exercises, then that's really not an effective exercise for you. Now let's say you start doing a barbell row in a deficit and you're getting really good DOMs from it, it's not completely wrecking your CNS, I don't think it's a bad exercise to perform. Is it a necessity, and is it the number one thing that's gonna build a thick back? Absolutely not. So I think that the biggest thing is picking exercises that you feel a really good stimulus, and the limiting factor and what's driving that failure point is that target muscle group.
I love it. Very well said.
Cables are more effective than dumbbells for building a muscle, specifically in your upper body.
I'll be controversial. False. I think it can totally be true. The only reason I'm being a dick is I don't think it's categorically true enough to say like this is capital T true. I think that by rigging certain dumbbell exercises in certain creative ways, you could get an amazing stimulus. And because dumbbells don't suffer from having a frictional component, which makes the concentric relatively more difficult than the eccentric, which is the opposite of what you want, they don't have some of the limitations of cables. On the other hand, you can do way more stuff with cables than you can with dumbbells because gravity only points one way, but the cable can point any way you want. So if you say cables are better for upper body development, it's one of those things where I think it's probably like 55 or 60% true in some sense, and maybe 55 or 60% false in another sense. It's right down. I was gonna do this, but I know how these work. I've been on Jeff Nippard's show, and they don't let you do that. Phil, the camera guy, has a brick physically that he would throw at me, and he threatened, he motioned even before this.
So yeah, for me, it's unequivocally cables over free weights, and it's a few reasons. Number one is just you can control the vector of force from any angle. So like whatever is most efficacious for a target muscle group, whether it's like a bracing position or Like let's say we're doing a lateral raise and you can like place that cable height at any height that's going to give you the best stretch bias, the best peak contraction bias based on what you're trying to do. If you're hitting a tricep movement, you can put that vector force behind you, get even more stretch. It allows you to do so many more things, and the things that we love to do as coaches ourselves, meaning maximizing range of motion, maximizing force in that stretch position.
Yes, and the vector of like, I want it to do this, but with dumbbells I can only do this.
It's like, everything with dumbbells is through the floor. It's through gravity. So there's very little, like, other than like maybe setting up a bench in a certain way, like we did with the controlled curls, like those are great. Would I say that maybe those are better than if I were to put incline bench and put those cables down the low position and coming from behind? Arguably similar. Yep. So I think for that reason, it's just like you have so much more freedom to control all of those variables to maximize the movement pattern, that it's just, to me, the dumbbells, they're limiting in the fact that due to gravity, there's only so much you can do with them.
Yep. I have a ton of respect for that.
There is a golden rest time to shoot for between sets.
One single rest time?
Like there's a golden rest time that everybody should shoot for between sets. Yeah, I think this one's definitely one that people are always saying, like 60, for like hypertrophy, 60 seconds is optimal, or 60 to 90 seconds. It is always going to be exercise dependent. For example, like if you're doing a smaller muscle group, like we were doing some sets today where Mike was only giving me 15, 10, 12 seconds, 30 seconds between my sets, because of the fact that I was not aerobically fatigued, the target muscle group was on fire, but I was able to get back into it and hit another 6, 7, 8 reps with really good form. Now, let's go the inverse and say I make you do a tempo leg press set where you're doing a 4 to 6 second eccentric, a 1 second pause, and a huge stretch position, and then driving out for 10 to 12 reps where the set's gonna take you 2 minutes and you are literally like rolling on the floor after the set. It would be very unwise for you to hop into your next set 60 seconds later. So for me, it's all about how, first of all, what's the goal of the exercise? Are you doing, let's say, exercise where you're minimizing rest time to try to hit like, let's say 70 reps? Or are you doing something where you're trying to maximize your load over time, like a leg press where you are trying to say, last week I did 12 reps with that perfect tempo for 6 plates, and this time I want to do it with 6 plates and a 10. It would behoove you to have a more rest time so you are not fatigued to the point where you're not going to be able to progressively overload with the weight. So what I always tell people is it's 100% determined based on a multitude of factors, and you can't pigeonhole it into like 60 seconds is the optimal, or 30 seconds is the optimal, or no rest time, supersetting is optimal. They all have their place. It's just a matter of like, what are you trying to do in that moment and what muscle group are you targeting?
You pretty much said it all.
Form is more important than intensity for building muscle.
Oh, cool. Can I kick this one?
Mm-hmm. This one hurts us, I know.
It hurts. In the short term, and if you survive in one piece for however many years, how much you do is really what determines a huge fraction of muscle growth, which also explains the world. Like if you have a hypothesis about how the real world works, but you look around and nothing matches, you're probably wrong. All these jack dudes, bodybuilders, pros, do some old dumb shit. The technique fucking sucks, form sucks. And you're like, but how are they so big? Well, it's because intensity, they got it. There's not a single pro that's not at least interested in trying to be intense. But the kicker is, if you're around, if you use good technique, your body will almost never get hurt, and you'll have a long career. You're gonna reach your own personal best development only through that modality. And the other thing I'll say is, it's both. What is more important to getting a rocket successfully into space, the strength of the engine or the aerodynamics of the rocket? Well, the strength of the engine could just launch a fucking brick house up into space if it's strong enough. But if you've got both, you got the fucking winning combo. Intensity is non-negotiable, but because you lift in a certain technique and you can crank your intensity up and down, as a matter of thinking about it logically, intensity comes first, just like letters come before words. Are letters more important than words? Well, letters by themselves are fucking nonsense. You got to put them together to make words. Letters are more important than words because without letters, you don't have words. Without good technique, you don't have a long history of training and targeting the muscles that don't respond well with shit technique. Once you have that rocket outline, that aerodynamic rocket shape of amazing technique, you put the huge engine of intensity in it and you're fucking Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I think if you had to and this one hurts because if you look at it, you're like, okay, is somebody gonna make more progress with perfect form using such little weight and pushing not even close to failure? Or is the guy over there that you're literally rolling your eyes at, that's stacking out the lat pull down and just ripping and ripping it
as he's doing an exercise that you can't tell what muscle that's working and neither can he.
But he's literally
doing shit.
Doing something.
Yeah.
That person's probably building more muscle than you, even if your technique is 100% sound. So I think, like you said, it hurts because we're so form focused. But if you can take that intensity and apply it to really good range of motion and using more time under tension and the things that we do, it's your progress will absolutely skyrocket. Your body will thank you. You'll feel better than you ever have. Your physique will look better than it ever has. You won't hurt walking up and down a set of stairs. Little things, right? that I think we should value. So I think we're on the same page there. This has been one that's been bouncing around a lot. So high quality foods will get you leaner than processed foods, equating for macros and calories. So everything is equated. Your calories are exactly the same, your macros are exactly the same, but you're eating either 100% non-processed, whatever, non-GMO, organic, cooking everything yourself, or the other person is eating Quest bars and protein chips and yogurt and basically things that you can just buy in an aisle.
So the question is, the food quality, is it better, macros calories equated, than the just
it says high quality foods will get you leaner.
Leaner. I got one of these for that.
I'm gonna say as well.
Damn. Hit it.
I think that this was a hard one for me because, yes, the law of thermodynamics is king, but if you were talking about a leaner physique and you're eating foods with higher levels of satiation, higher levels of micronutrients that are going to give you better energy, you're probably going to be recovering better. You're probably going to be able to train a little bit harder because let's say I'm eating shit food with no fiber and I'm trying to maintain a super low caloric deficit. I'm probably gonna be hungry as shit because that food just goes right through you. I'm probably not gonna be sleeping very well. My training's probably gonna get impacted. So if we're talking about the whole equation, right, which is output versus input, and your output is less because your energy is worse, your digestion is worse, your recovery is worse, you're not gonna get as lean even though the calories are the same because your output side of the equation and your recovery side of the equation isn't gonna be as effective as it would be on higher quality foods that you have good gut health, you have good sleep, you have good energy levels, you have good satiation because you're eating more fibrous foods. So that's why I think I can confidently say false because even if the calories are the same.
Yeah, and it's not a big effect. It's an effect that matters when you start really pushing your own leanness levels. That's where it matters. Your first 6 weeks of a diet from being pretty out of shape, dude, just get the calories and macros and do what's right. But especially if you get into competing or really pushing the pace, especially if you're hungry and if you have digestive issues, higher quality, less processed food is gonna satiate you more. Less hunger means better sleep, which transforms physiques, less stress, and slightly better gut health potentially. On the other hand, if you're eating lots of processed foods that in the context of your diet keep you quite full, you're sleeping great, and honestly a lot of people can eat a ton of processed shit and they feel just fine. I think a big assumption in bodybuilding is everyone's guts are fucked up. That's not true. A lot of people just fucking wheel and deal. If you're that guy, it's not gonna fucking matter at all. You switch to clean food, nothing will happen to you. Most people, though, by a small margin, will benefit from more whole foods than a ton of processed stuff.
There is such a thing as overtraining. I think that with training and everything else, like there's levers to pull. Like there's too much and there's too little. I think you have to find that delicate balance of like where you are as an athlete, enhanced or not enhanced, if you've been training for 1 year versus 10 years, like what is your ability to recover, like how much can you push where it's not affecting your training the next day. Like all of these things are important, and like what then becomes like junk volume in a sense of like if you are doing it just to like do it and say that I was in the gym for 2 hours and I did 6 different exercises, then yeah, it's probably not going to behoove you, and there is such thing as overtraining. Now, if you are going to the gym and you're pushing those sets to failure and you're recovering well, and let's say you're enhanced and you've been training for 15 years, I think it's permissible. But I think you have to understand where you are in your trajectory and journey, and that more is not always better, especially when it comes to training. I think that's where people like get it wrong, is everything else in your life you usually get more out of if you put more in. If you put more into your business, you're probably going to make more money. If you put more into your relationships, they're probably going to give more back to you. Whereas with like the gym, it's a delicate balance, because like if you go balls to the wall and you just train as hard as you can for as long as you can, a lot of times it's going to start to, your body's going to start to push back at you. So you have to refine your mindset and how, in your approach to the gym, to be more methodical. And it's going to really depend on all those things. Like, are you progressing? Are you doing too much? Are you doing too little? And really gauging it over time.
Yeah, really well said. I'm approaching this question a bit more from a formal sports science approach. There are at least 4 different types of what you can colloquially call overtraining, but they're not called that in sports science. There's functional overreaching, which means you go beyond your body's ability to recover for like a week or 2 at most, and then you get the super compensatory effect where when you come back after a time of like a week deload, you're bigger and stronger than ever. So it was worth it. There's non-functional overreaching. If you do like 2 to 4 weeks, depending on it, of like pounding yourself until you're getting weaker and smaller and flatter every week, you can come back 100% within another 2 to 4 weeks of probably mostly off time or deloading, but you don't have a super compensatory response. You just get back to normal. So you kind of pissed away 2 to 4 weeks of getting worse. You piss back 2 to 3 weeks of getting better. So like, yahoo, that's 7 weeks of like me standing in place. So non-functional overreaching is stupid. It takes a big effort mentally, and almost no one can get even to non-functional overreaching. I mean, how many people do you know will go to the gym week after week, push their hardest, see their numbers decline as far as performance, and still like not take an off day, not get off the diet? Most people snap. Yeah, that's a good thing. You're supposed to fucking, inside joke. You're supposed to fucking back off. That's your body telling you to back off. The third is recoverable overtraining. Overtraining is different than overreaching. Overtraining takes months to do and takes months to come back from. Months to feel normal, months to want to train again, months where your joints don't feel weird. You can recover from it though in a 3 to 6 month period, and then the rest of your career goes well. Type 4 overtraining, the 2 types of overtraining, 2 types of overreaching. The 4th type is non-recoverable overtraining, which has been demonstrated through a few like ethnographic studies of athletes. They go so far into the overtrained state, they're never the same again. I had a buddy from college. He did the squat every day program for lols, part of Olympic weightlifting, and for 6 months straight he squatted every day, and I believe he went from a 250-pound squat maximum to 405. Legit, right? Young guy, healthy guy, strong. Then he kept going, and his body was like, you want to stop? And he's like, nope, fuck that. He kept going. He had to back away because his hips and knees started to just give him trouble. Every time after that, years later, every time he went above 275 in the squat, hips, knees started giving out. He had to back off. He never squatted 405 or even 365 ever again. Something happened to him. He never got back. That's really unusual, but we know it happens. So my word to the wise here is push your body hard. But if you have 2 weeks in a row where you are losing performance and motivation to train, whether you're drug-free or not, it's time for at least a few days of higher food, minimal training, tons of sleep, tons of Netflix. Text somebody to come give you a beach, whatever it takes, at least a hand job, at least a kind look, you know? Something to tell you that people care about you. A couple of days of that, maybe a week of that, you're gonna have functional overreachings. You're gonna come back like the fucking Hulk. If you have a time where you pushed it so hard that when you came back a few weeks later, you were no better, now you know your limit is 2 or 3 weeks of that fucking shit. Because for people that aren't super motivated, who consume a lot of memes for motivation because they need them, you know, inspiration stuff, like you're never fucking going hard enough, David Goggins type of shit. That stuff is critical for people to consume as media when they tend to underwork. The problem is when psychotic people like you and I take that shit too far, like, you know, they say like, you just gotta outwork everyone. All right. Yeah. For my last prep, it was difficult for me to walk because I was doing so many steps that my legs stopped moving, and I would finish most of my hard work sets and I would have like a fever chill response for weeks. And then I would finish recording lectures for work, and after like the last 3 lectures of the day, it was like 8 lectures a day, after I stopped talking, I was like, like I would have a full body chill. And like, I didn't do well at that show. I looked tired and fucked up, and it took me about 2 months to feel normal again. That was overtraining. If I was really dumb, pretty dumb, I would have pushed it so far that I would have been fucking broken and in shambles, and I would never bodybuild it again. The shit is real. So when you're ultra motivated and focused, you probably have more of a challenge focusing more on recovery, more on food, more on sleep, and less on pushing that shit. Because from some wise folks here to you, the viewer, who is no doubt wise in many ways, but maybe isn't super clued in on bodybuilding, all that like fucking, you just fucking gotta go harder every time, brother, you never fucking give up, and you think you're fucking done enough, you gotta do more. That shit feels good to hear, but most of the people that want to hear it are the fucking lazy assholes that have, Broderick Chavez's words, is putting, their big battle is putting down the PlayStation controller and going to the gym. When you got family and making 18 things of content all day long and collabing at the gym, your problem is you do too much, not enough. And it's important for people to find where they are on that work spectrum. If you need to work harder, fucking do it. If you need to back the fuck up, that's just as real. It's just as real. It's not sexy, not a lot of people talk about it, but some of us are psychotic. You know, if you're that like A+ student, you know, the people at the front of the class in 10th grade that are taking all the notes, then people need to try a little less hard in most of their life, not harder.
Yeah, I think that is perfectly said. But yeah, that's what I had. I feel like I learned something. That was cool, especially that last segment you talked about, like the different actual like scientific loading and deloading phases. We'll have to have a whole conversation because I like never deload. I think mostly due to the way I train, but probably could stand to take 1 or 2 weeks off a year here and there. But yeah, thanks so much for this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I thoroughly did. If you guys are not already, make sure to subscribe to Mike's channel, RP. He does so much educational and very like finite, refined content on, let's say like rest times, or how much volume, or how much you should be eating in order to grow effectively without putting on too much body fat. All of these things. Amazing channel. As you guys probably are well aware, if you're watching me, you probably know about Dr. Mike. So, but also we are doing a seminar in Vegas the day before the Olympia. So join Jared, myself, Mike. It's gonna be a fucking amazing time. Link's gonna be in the description. We're gonna be doing full exercise demonstrations, open gym, food, small bespoke Q&A. So it's gonna be absolutely sensational.
Yes.
I will see you on the next video.